If the Titanic wasn't exactly stylistically up to date, it was safety conscious. In addition to the double bottom and the watertight bulkheads, watertight doors in those bulkheads could be locked and sealed electrically from the bridge. Although the original plans called for 64 lifeboats, the final tally of 20 exceeded the legal limit for British-flagged ships of her size.
It's amazing how people talk about lifeboats. There weren't enough on the Titanic and this type of thing. But one must remember all steamship companies of the time had similar faults. Lifeboat accommodation was based on tonnage, not the number of people you carried. And in fact, the Titanic had more lifeboats than what the requirement called for. She had 14 wooden boats, she had 2 emergency cutters, and she had 4 collapsible boats.
With room for 1,200 passengers in the lifeboats, mariners considered this more than sufficient for a ship with a capacity of over 3,000. Lifeboats were meant only to ferry passengers from a damaged or disabled ship, not to sustain every passenger on board indefinitely on the open seas. And why should Harland and Wolff worry now that science had provided the wireless for ships to communicate at sea? This was arguably the single greatest technological achievement on the Titanic, and possibly its most significant safety device. And it was unlike that on any other ship.
She was the only one afloat that carried a Marconi rotary disc. Titanic had 16 studs around the periphery of her disc. This thing spun at a high rate of speed, and every time the electrodes lined up, the spark jumped between them. This caused more hits and gave Titanic's spark a very musical tone.
The spark discharged across the electrodes 120 times per second, which resulted in a clear, high-density tone. When the operator pressed the key, a circuit was completed, allowing current to flow through the transmitter. Opening and closing the circuit created the Morse code characters comprising each message.
And it was the tone itself that carried farther, not the brute power of the spark, but the actual tone.
The Titanic's Marconi wireless had a range of 250 to 400 miles during the day, and even farther at night.
They were testing the wireless in Belfast, and the wireless operators actually picked up Cairo. So that was quite a distance back then.
In the unlikely event that the Titanic was damaged, a signal could be sent to nearby ships to aid in rescue operations. Ships could also warn each other about potential trouble, such as icebergs.